Hi, everybody. Grateful to be with us here at ULT San Diego, Aquarian series. Tonight, the astrological sign of Aquarius, and that is going to be given to us by Kurt Gradine. We'll get started with a reading for tonight's presentation. This from the voice of the silence. Know, conqueror of sins, once that a Sawani hath crossed the seventh path, all nature thrills with joyous awe and feels subdued. The silver star now twinkles out the news to the night blossoms. The streamlet to the pebbles ripples out the tale. Dark ocean waves will roar it to the rocks, surf-bound. Scent-laden breezes sing it to the vales, and stately pines mysteriously whisper, a master has arisen, a master of the day. He standeth now like a white pillar to the west, upon whose face the rising sun of thought eternal poureth forth its most glorious waves. His mind, like a becalmed and boundless ocean, spreadeth out in shoreless space. He holdeth life and death in his strong hand. Yea, he is mighty, the living power made free in him. That power which is himself can raise the tabernacle of illusion high above the gods, above great Brahm and Indra. Now he shall surely reach his great reward. Shall he not use the gifts which it confers for his own rest and bliss? His well-earned weal and glory, he the subduer of the great delusion? Nay, O thou candidate for nature's hidden lore, if one would follow in the steps of holy Tathagata, those gifts and powers are not for self. Wouldst thou thus dam the waters born on Sumeru? Shalt thou divert the stream for thine own sake, or send it back to its prime source along the crests of cycles? If thou wouldst have that stream of hard-earned knowledge, of wisdom heaven-born, remain sweet running waters, thou shouldst not leave it to become a stagnant pond. And now, Kirk Grady.
Thank you, Monica. That was very beautifully done. Theosophy teaches that among the divine arts and sciences forming the first great truths handed down by divine beings to the whole of awakening humanity was that of astronomy and its symbolism. As one of the central keys to the ancient mysteries of theogony, it included an exact mathematical and geometric knowledge of the positioning of the planets and stars, along with penetrating insight into their inner meaning and intimate relationship to the karma of humanity and its string of globes. What we call astrology today is, for the most part, a mere shadow of this exact spiritual science, in which the whole world's history and its future was recorded. So sacred and guarded is this knowledge, wrote H.P. Blavatsky, that she only saw one true zodiac in her lifetime, in an Arabic work in the possession of a Sufi. The real zodiacs are preserved by the great brotherhood of adepts, and awakened spiritual faculties are needed in order to properly decipher their sevenfold symbology. Only those who, quote, are initiated into all the mysteries of nature, as well as into astronomy and astrology, knew precisely in what way nations and mankind, whole races, as well as individuals, would be affected by the so-called signs of the zodiac. Still, in Isis Unveiled, she gave what appears to be a hand-drawn diagram showing the order and arrangement of signs and described the overall scope of the zodiac in this way. Thus, be it remembered, number one, that the universe is not a spontaneous creation, but an evolution from pre-existent matter. Two, that it is only one of an endless series of universes. Three, that eternity is pointed off into grand cycles, in each of which 12 transformations of our world occur, following its partial destruction by fire and water alternately, so that when a new minor period sets in, the Earth is so changed, even geologically, as to be practically a new world. Four, that of these 12 transformations, the Earth, after each of the first six, is grosser, and everything on it, man included, more material than after the preceding one, while after each of the remaining six, the contrary is true, both Earth and man growing more and more refined and spiritual with each terrestrial change. Number five, that when the apex of the cycle is reached, a gradual dissolution takes place, and every living and objective form is destroyed. But when that point is reached, humanity has become so fitted to live subjectively as well as objectively, that is, has become capable of living in spirit as well as in matter. And not humanity alone, but also animals, plants, and every atom. After a time of rest, when a new world becomes self-formed, all beings will return again. This stupendous conception the ancients synthesized for the instruction of the common people into a single pictorial design, the zodiac or celestial belt. H.P. Blavatsky then goes on to explain in Isis that this 12-fold grand cycle is also the true meaning behind the patriarchal lineage given in chapter 5 of Genesis. The whole scheme of the Old Testament, she writes, all its heroes, personages, and events, once properly interpreted, will be found to be built upon the 12 zodiacal signs and the cycle of avatars. The word avatar in the Hindu tradition is akin to that of a bodhisattva in the Buddhist tradition. It refers to the self-conscious and willing descent of deity, the light and sound of the Logos in human form. The doctrine of avatars, she says, is one of the grandest mysteries in all the world religions and mythologies. And as we shall see, it is central to the meaning of Aquarius. Besides the Old Testament, the zodiacal cycle is echoed in the 12 Olympians of the Greek and Roman pantheons, the 12 Aesors of the Norwegian prose Edda, the 12 Adityas of the Hindu pantheon, and in many other world mythologies. And also, as we outlined in our November presentation on the clock, the sacred geometry of the cross, triangle, tetrad, hexagon, and decad, leading to the 12 faces of the dodecahedron, sacred to Pythagoras as to Plato, is also a geometrical symbol for the zodiacal clock. All of these ancient mythologies were once part of mankind's most ancient science And even from the fragments left to us, there are many clues regarding the meaning of each sign. As I imagine most or all of you know, in typical modern astrology, the cycle of astronomical ages are defined by the precession of the equinoxes through the sidereal year, which takes roughly 26,000 years to complete. This means that from the viewpoint of the Earth, the sun's position in relation to the stars uh, um, at the vernal equinox passes clockwise through the zodiacal belt at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. And by the way, I want to thank Michelle Christie for having offered several of her slides from the talk she gave on the zodiac just a few weeks ago, which we'd refer everyone to when it becomes available. According to some astronomers in 1902 in the northern hemispheres of the Earth, the sun's position at the vernal equinox passed from Pisces into Aquarius, where it will remain for another 20.4 centuries. In the southern hemisphere, on the same day, of course, the sun passed into the autumnal equinox in the constellation Leo, while the two poles of the solstices were in Taurus and Scorpio. And we ran across this note from H.P. Blavatsky that we don't recall ever seeing before, where she says that the same astronomical cross, rotated 90 degrees, occurred at the start of Kali Yuga. And that if we understood what that meant, we would have the key to half the world's religious mysteries. In The Secret Doctrine, as in the writings of the 1975 cycle, the 12 great orders of the zodiac are linked with the 12 nidanas of the Buddhist system and correlated with the sevenfold cycle of races in our current evolutionary round. In addition, it should be noted that the 12 orders apply to all macrocosmic and microcosmic cycles, from that of a Mahamanvantara to a planetary cycle, to rounds, to races and subraces. And if we overlay the zodiacal wheel, as we've done here, in the order given in Isis, with the spiraling cycle of root races that's given on page 300 of Book 2 of The Secret Doctrine, we can begin to see the logic. Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio, as you see there at the bottom of the wheel, for example, are clearly connected by HPB with the momentous turning point at the midpoint of the round, where the golden age awakening of the human mind occurred. HPB explains that the three positions of Virgo that are shown in the Dendera zodiac, which she also says she saw the same one in a temple in northern India, that offers an astronomical record of the first three divine dynasties who initiated and taught the third root race, all the arts and sciences. Whereas Libra, symbolized by the scales, marks the turning point between the descent and the ascent, the equilibrium between spirit and matter. As the balance point, it marks where the individual monad begins the upward arc of self-conscious evolution through the cycle of reincarnations. Scorpio, in one of its many meanings, wrote HPB, represents the fall into sin and matter associated with the fourth root race, Atlanteans. And carrying the correspondences further in relation to our topic today, it becomes quite important to note that the position of Aquarius, where it ends up being in this overlay, besides being the precessional epoch we are currently in, we are apparently also in a much larger Aquarian cycle. This larger epoch roughly encompasses the second subrace of the fifth root race to at least the first subrace of the sixth root race, with each subrace lasting roughly 250,000 years, as given by HPB. It seems we are in the midst of a much, much larger Aquarian cycle, lasting from our current subrace to over 1,000,000 years into the future. And if this is even remotely accurate, I think you would all agree that it increases the relevance and scope of today's topic considerably. So we'll now take a few minutes to examine the mythology, glyphs, and symbols associated with the sign of Aquarius. It is well known that the sign of Aquarius is hydrokous in Greek, meaning the water bearer, and associated with the myth of Ganymede, whose abduction by Zeus is coincident with the casting down of Astrea. In Egyptian mythology, HPB also commented on Aquarius as Happy Thoth, the synthesis of the mysteries of the Nile, with the god of wisdom, called the keeper of the gates of heaven and lord of the horizon, who cleaves the earth. She also points to a whole range of meanings associated with the double zigzag water glyph and the alchemical significance of hydrogen. Subarao adds the corresponding Vedic constellation called Kumbha Rasi, mythologically associated with the goddess Ganga and Shiva. And Helen Valborg beautifully synthesizes much of this for us in her article on Aquarius, while also adding the correspondences in the ancient Sumerian Anu or Gula, the Assyrian Ramanu, the Christian Arthurian Holy Grail, and the alchemical Aqua Regia. She also brings in the compilation of aphorisms offered by H.P. Blavatsky titled The Aquarian Axioms. And Sri Raghavan Iyer also left us 7 articles on the theme the Aquarian Tide, the Aquarian Civilization, Aquarian Harmony, Aquarian Therapy, Aquarian Spirituality, and the Aquarian Elixir, all of which are highly illuminating and worthy of repeated study. Now, we're only going to have a chance to do a very quick overview today, so obviously we won't be covering all of these points. Aquarius, as the Greek Ganymede, is the water bearer of the gods, from whose jar pours forth the soma of the gods, the Akashic elixir of divine wisdom, sacrificial service, and immortality. At one level, the abduction by Zeus in the form of an eagle, HPB wrote, relates to the necessary withdrawal of enlightened beings from direct and visible involvement in human karma. She gives us the example. This is what occurred with that portion of the Atlantean race of sorcerers whose misuse of divine faculties and deliberate violations of karmic law led to their own destruction via the biblical deluge and sinking of continents. The Greek myth goes on to speak of the subsequent casting down by Zeus of Astrea. Astrea, whose name means star maiden or star light, is at one level an obvious reference to the astral light, a cosmic and human principle composed of 7 subplanes. HPB links Astrea to Virgo, as well as Isis and Vok of the Hindu tradition. In that sense, Astrea would not only be the immaculate virgin goddess of divine innocence, harmonious balance, and justice, but also the fourfold logos and the mystic powers of sound and speech. Astrea may also refer to the divine Shakti by which great teachers sound the keynote for an epoch, which also, while also projecting a partial aspect of themselves into incarnation to experience the limitations of a given age. Quote, I create this whole universe with a single portion of myself, says Krishna, and remain separate. In the Greek allegory, Astrea is cast into the pit, quote unquote, the underworld, which is earth life, heralding the dawn of a utopian golden age of which she is the ambassador. But when the sacred wisdom is misused, inverted, or misappropriated, the liquid fire of Aquarius becomes the lower astral serpent, muddied by the clay of personal or tribal identity and selfish intent. In such a case, Astrea heralds the deluge, the loss of innocence and the destruction by nature of all that cannot participate in the higher purposes of soul evolution in the service to the whole of humanity. In the Egyptian astronomical pantheon, Aquarius is represented by the androgynous water god Hapi, Hapi, associated with both the celestial and the terrestrial Nile. The waters of fecund potentiality, compassion, and creativity in the universal mind, and the nourishing and sustaining waters of life on the earthly plane. In the Buddhist system of nidanas, the Aquarian cycle corresponds to jati, a Sanskrit word meaning birth. And HPB explains that the falcon-headed deity Horus, who was first born in the Nile of heaven, is an allegory for the Logos emerging at the dawn of time from the waters of the deep. The second, or lower Horus, depicted in Egyptian mythology, was the descent of that same Logos or Christos into human form. Such incarnations offer the possibilities of rebirth in consciousness for all humanity through the fiery waters of tapas or tumo, through purgation, meditation, and initiation, though but a few are willing to undergo the moral and mental disciplines needed. Thoth Hermes, the god of wisdom, is repeatedly connected with Hapi as the keeper and opener of the gates of heaven, wherein one becomes the heir of eternity. As, quote, Lord of the horizon and cleaver of the earth, it points to Buddhi as the discriminative faculty and the moment of choice that faces humanity when divine waters descend. Hapi is often depicted with lotuses emerging from his head, or rather its head, because it's as I mentioned, it's an androgynous deity, as well as from the bowl of water that it carries. The lotus is another universal symbol found in every philosophical and religious system, symbolizing the womb of nature, the union of fire and water, the unfoldment from within without, and the blossoming that occurs with enlightenment. The lotus and water are among the oldest universal symbols found in every mythology. Among its many associations, HPB states in Isis, water is a symbol for the secret doctrine itself, Theosophia, or the Gupta Vidya. And in speaking of the zigzag glyph of Aquarius, which she illustrates actually on the second book of The Secret Doctrine, she wrote the following: letters, as much as numbers, were all mystic, whether in combination or each taken separately. The most sacred of all is the letter M. It is both feminine and masculine, or androgyne, and is made to symbolize water, the great deep in its origin. It is mystic in all the languages, Eastern and Western. Maitreya is the secret name of the fifth Buddha and the Kalki avatar of the Brahmins, the last Messiah who will come at the culmination of the great cycle. It is also the initial letter of the Greek metis, or divine wisdom, of Mimra, the word or logos, and of Mithras, the monad and mystery. All of these are born in and from the great deep. And in the stanzas of Xian, the water of boundless space is the great mother referred to in Shloka 1, which swells from within without to emerge from non-being into being at the dawn of time. Also called abstract ideal matter, or mula prakriti. From one point of view, HPB calls it the veil of Parabrahm, and from another, one with it. All lower levels of differentiated substance arise like curds emerging within the ocean of immortality. Inseparable from divine thought and divine eros, this boundless ocean of the one self radiates the one unmanifested self, unfolding a triune formless logos, which in turn emanates the seven logoic rays. Each of the wavy lines of the Aquarian glyph are composed of 7 points, 3 above and 4 below. HPB quotes the Zohar: "The deity is like the sea from which outflows a stream called wisdom, the waters of which fall into a lake named intelligence. From the basin, like 7 channels, issue the 7 Sephiroth, for 10 equal 7." Unquote. Theosophy goes on further to teach that it is only through the logos of the cosmos and the God in man, a ray of the one of the 7 dhyanis within every human being, also called the Ishvara or Ishtaguru in the heart, that one obtains knowledge of the real. And it is this light of the logos, wrote Bhavani Shankar, that is transmitted from guru to disciple when the time for real initiation comes. Though Aquarius is an air sign, an element associated with mind and thought, the double glyph also points to the capacity of Manas to function as an antaskarana bridge between heaven and earth, between the Akashic and the astral, the spiritual and the intellectual, the intuitive and the rational. The capacity to harmonize and synthesize the deepest flashes of insight and spiritual awakening with unconditional commitments to the service of all sentient beings, and the reflection of both in the smallest circles of daily dharma would seem to be one of the hallmarks of the Aquarian individual. The effort to manifest the divine purpose on behalf of the least and the lowest in the largest social and political arenas where lives and nations are at stake was courageously exemplified in an Aquarian modality by Mahatma Gandhi. In Greek, Aquarius is hydrokous, as we mentioned, linking the constellation to the element of hydrogen. Chemically, hydrogen is colorless, odorless, tasteless, non-toxic, and highly combustible. It is the most abundant chemical substance in the universe, constituting roughly 75% of all normal matter. Stars such as the Sun are believed to be mainly composed of hydrogen in the plasma state. Alchemically and cosmically, wrote HPB, hydrogen is triune in its primary manifestation as spirit, soul, and mind, or Atma Buddhi Manas. In the human constitution, it is the timeless alkahest, which dissolves all solidified mental and moral poisons of vice and ignorance, of fixation and grasping, and transmutes them into the golden elixir of prajna and karuna. From the SD, rudimentary man, having been nursed by the air or the wind, becomes the perfect man later on when, with the development of spiritual fire, the noumenon of the three in one within his self, he acquires from his inner self or instructor the wisdom of self-consciousness, which he does not possess in the beginning. Thus, here again, divine spirit is symbolized by the sun or fire, divine soul by water and the moon, both standing for the father and mother of Numa, human soul or mind, symbolized by the wind or air, for Numa means breath. However, HPB points out just one page later that all the elements can be understood as aspects or differentiations of the root element of spiritual fire. Air is fluidic fire, water, liquid fire, earth, solid fire. All is fire, ignis, in its ultimate constitution, or I, the root of which is zero, not in our conceptions, the all in nature and its mind. Proto matter, or divine substance, is divine fire. It is the creator, the destroyer, the preserver. As symbols of Fohat, the zigzag lines of the Aquarian glyph are also indicative of the polarity of will and desire. Cosmic will is both divine eros and cosmic electricity, in Tibetan called Fohat. The association of Uranus with cosmic will or spiritual will, as with the constellation of Aquarius, while obscure to present humanity, is part of the Aquarian notion of harmony to be unfolded in the current epoch. Fohat, latent in Taurus, stirs into activity in Leo, fully awakens in Scorpio, and is purified and synthesized in Aquarius. The higher divine serpent of cosmic electricity, governed by universal compassion and empathy for all that lives, overcomes the infernal astral serpent of personal desire, which inverts and desecrates the energies of the divine will. From Raghavan Iyer. Spiritual growth is epitomized by the image of the silent, ceaseless construction of the temple of truth, precipitated in its crystalline splendor by meditative action out of the Akashic waters of life. True spiritual will, the conscious direction of energy by intelligent ideation and selfless volition, self-conscious volition, is the supreme criterion and sovereign talisman of Aquarian humanity. Hydrogen in its lower manifestation, HPB points out later in the SD, is kama, blind desire, which clouds the discrimination and leaves the unwary and abandoned wreck. Whenever there is a quickening of soul knowledge, there is also necessarily arising terrible tests and trials, a churning up of all hidden but poisonous character defects, the subtle and diverse forms of personal ambition, lower egotism, anger, lust, and greed. Quote, "He who is close to me," said Jesus, "is close to fire." Only when selflessly governed from above below can the higher lightning conquer and master the lower. Helen Valberg points this out, how in the ancient Akkadian version of the constellation Aquarius, the god Adad, also known as Ramanu, was depicted with lightning bolts in each hand, by which he subdues the winged serpent, which becomes his steed. The higher and lower waters are integral to the analogies found in the voice of the silence, as well as we heard read out with the opening reading. Manas is both the slayer of the real and the knower of the real, as the self-conscious capacity for reflection, choice, and responsibility. When captive to the separative self and its volatile desires, the mind is drawn into the stormy sea of human life, quote unquote, and disappears within the first great vortex. But by closing fast the mind from the dire heresy of separateness and baptizing itself in the pure, bright essence of Alaya, the law of love eternal, the aspiring mind is capable of the highest forms of learning, ceaseless self-correction, and spiritual self-regeneration. Shrotapati means stream entrant, an irreversible commitment to aid the spiritual awakening of humanity via the paramita path tread by all the bodhisattvas of ages past. Through 7 guarded gates, the aspirant crosses over the sea of Maya, leading to the other shore, to Akshara itself, called the indestructible fount of omniscience. This is the culminating form of Buddha Yoga and the Bodhisattva path. The highest forms of samadhi and dhyana then function as the creative capacity to selflessly incarnate for kalpas without number, in harmony with the sacrificial will of nature, through which one can aid each and every being who is trapped, lost, and suffering. All of this suggests that both the metaphysics and ethics of the core teachings of Theosophia are keys to understanding the meaning of what will unfold for humanity in the Aquarian age. The sevenfold path, as well as the sevenfold logoic wisdom of the dhyanis and their cosmic hierarchies, animating both macrocosm and microcosm, is the fundamental basis of the trans-Himalayan system brought to the West, long known only in the mystery schools of antiquity. It points to the unity of nature, God, and man, and the esoteric wisdom at the root of every great tradition. The 7 above and the 7 below likewise link up with the interlaced triangles of the Theosophical seal. Though a 6-pointed star, its central meaning, Mahatma K.H. wrote in letter 59, central meaning includes the center point, the synthesis and union completed by the sacred number 7. If one includes the inner vertices created by the crossing of the triangles, one finds 7 inside and 7 outside, a sacred geometrical formula relevant to countless aspects of the philosophy. If the zodiac and precessional cycle are linked to the cycle of avatars, the incarnation of Manus and Rishis, of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as HPB taught, then the meaning of the age of Aquarius may be perhaps better approached by a very brief overview and comparison to the two stages, or two ages rather, which preceded the Aquarian age. The Kali Yuga, an epoch of 432,000 years, began in the last one-third of the age of Taurus. Both the Bhagavad Gita and the Zodiac, wrote W.Q. Judge, are storehouses of knowledge which can be properly construed by the same method, he says, which begins with the path of devotion. In addition to the Gita, a familiarity with the longest epic poem known to humanity, the Mahabharata, would also begin to give us a picture of the divine ethos and graces of an advanced civilization existing in the age of Taurus. The age of Aries began around 2400 BCE, basking in the radiance of the fifth root race avataric keynote given by Krishna. The age of Aries witnessed what is called the Axial Age, which included the appearance of Shakyamuni Buddha, Confucius, and Lao Tzu in the East, and the great flowering of Hellenistic culture in Pythagoras and Plato in the West, among many other hierophants and teachers of the eternal doctrine. The Piscean Age began around 250 BCE and also had its great philosophers, mystics, and sages. In the East, this included Nagarjuna in the 2nd century, the founder of the Madhyamika school of Northern Buddhism. In the 4th century of the Common Era, the Buddhist scholar and master of meditation, Asanga, along with his brother Vasubandhu, founded the Yogacarya school, whose metaphysical presuppositions regarding consciousness, at least to the extent known to us, are very close to those of the secret doctrine. In Tibetan Buddhism, these two elaborations and extensions of the Buddhist teaching, that is, the Madhyamika and Yogacarya, are referred to as the second and third turning of the wheel of Dharma, with the fourth turning anticipated to arrive with the advent of Maitreya Buddha. The Piscean Age included the 8th century Hindu adept and philosopher Shankaracharya, who HPB called, quote, an avatar of Shiva in the full sense of the term. While in the Buddhist tradition, the same century witnessed the mysterious Shantideva, another great Nalanda master, linked to the celestial bodhisattva Manjushri. Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life still forms one of the central devotional texts of Mahayana Buddhism. In the West, of course, the Piscean Age was dominated by the great initiate Joshua ben Pandira, known to us as Jesus of Nazareth, whose Sermon on the Mount reformulated, wrote HPB, the ethics of Theosophia in a new garb. Despite his emphasis on nonviolence and humility, the extant texts that we have available to us, though highly edited, apparently, show him boldly affirming his, quote, unity with Father in heaven, and declaring, quote, I am the way, the truth, and the light, unquote. Many lesser-known magi, philosophers, and reformers, such as Apollonius of Tyana, Plotinus, and Iamblichus in the 3rd century, arose, though their influence was obscured by institutionalized religion, starting in the 3rd century of the Common Era, when the Emperor Constantine declared Christianity the state religion of the Roman Empire. A night of superstition, dogma, and degradation descended on the West. In the medieval or Dark Ages, more than a millennium passed in which dogmatic forms of religion were forced upon the masses at the point of a sword, where freedom of thought was thwarted by inquisition and guillotine, and where the once universal traditions of the perennial philosophy were actively persecuted, destroyed, or retired into secret. In understandable reaction to the illogic of religious dogmatism, science grew increasingly materialistic. Its refusal to acknowledge the philosophical sciences of the ancient world, wherein consciousness is understood as the primary reality, transcending and pervading all of what we call the observable universe, it became one of the thought forms of the age, still stifling the deeper soul intuitions of humanity. To counter all this, in the final 6 centuries of the Piscean Age, the Masters of Wisdoms initiated a 7 century plan in preparation for the age of Aquarius. In the century prior to the European Renaissance, this began with Tsongkhapa, who, according to HPB, was an avatar of Amitabha, the celestial Buddha of boundless time and infinite light, incarnating in Tibet in 1357. To purify, preserve, and promulgate the wisdom religion, he founded the Gelugpa order, the third Dalai Lama of which was recognized as a manifestation of Chenrezig, the Buddha of boundless compassion. In the last 25 years of each century since, one or more emissaries of the Brotherhood of Bodhisattvas has appeared in the West to help educate humanity, to begin reestablishing the imperishable foundations of divine wisdom as the basis of the regenerated civilizations of the future distant sixth subrace and sixth root race, and, of course, to likewise further the work of universal enlightenment. Most importantly, this included awakening the West to the living reality of Mahatmas, to the ever unbroken Guru Parampara chain, and the fact in nature of universal brotherhood and sisterhood. And for a comprehensive list and description of this Piscean cycle that we've just overviewed, we would refer students to a soft-bound text that's available on Amazon called Teachers of the Eternal Doctrine by Elton Hall. W.Q. Judge's article on Adepts in America in 1776 also points to the influence of Mahatmas on the founders and framers of the American Declaration of Independence and Constitution as another critical turning point taking place in the final 25 years of the 18th century. With their aid, he wrote, the powerful forces of religious dogma and bigotry were prevented from corrupting the cornerstone of a new government. This, quote, this was for the very good reason that for 1700 years, religion had battled against progress, against justice, against magnanimity, against the rights of man, unquote. On the cusp of the Aquarian Age, in the last 25 years of the 19th century, the sixth impulsion witnessed the incarnation of the enigmatic being we know as Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, boldly announcing that she was an agent of the Great Lodge. In addition to outlining the fundamental teachings of Theosophy, she braved the painful, though sacred duty of openly naming the Mahatmas behind the movement. In addition to her oral teaching and written works, explicating the demanding spiritual science of Theosophia, she founded the Theosophical Society on American soil in 1875. No doubt her extensive and repeated travels from Russia to America and from India to England cast powerful magnetic links across the world, furthering the Mahatmic vibration globally. In her article on the esoteric character of the Gospels, she spoke of several remarkable cycles that were coming to a close at the end of the 19th century, linking her life's work with the transition into the age of Aquarius and with the termination of the first 5,000 years of Kali Yuga. The calendar date associated with the death of Krishna and the start of Kali Yuga is that of February 17th and 18th, of which we are experiencing at the current moment, in 3102 before the Common Era. February 18th is also the special birthday, HPB wrote in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 470, of that nameless Lord of the Mysteries, who goes by many names as the incarnating Logoi of all nations, from Shiva to Thoth Hermes to Vishvakarman, Quan Shai Yin, and Pymander. She also refers to this bodhisattva as the great dragon of wisdom, born of fire and water, who is the alpha and omega of manifested nature, and who is that singular logoic source and essence from which the divine instructors of every culture and clime have emerged. It is significant to note that in the yearly cycle of the tropical zodiac, Aquarius begins on February 13th and extends to March 14th. And the central importance of the Aquarian date of February 18th is without doubt why Robert Crosby chose it to inaugurate the United Lodge of Theosophists, and why the Santa Barbara Lodge was likewise initiated on the same calendar day by Raghavan and Nandini Iyer. In Vedic astrology, Kumbha Rasi is the Sanskrit equivalent of Aquarius. Rasi means constellation, and Kumbha, among other meanings, refers to an earthen pot or the cosmic womb of nature. When represented by numbers, wrote Subbarao, the word is equivalent to the number 14. These, he says, refer to the 14 lokas of ancient Hindu cosmology, sometimes depicted as 7 levels or planes within the egg of Brahma and 7 without. This is very reminiscent, of course, of the double 7 water glyph of Aquarius. In addition, in Vedic astrology, Kumbha Rasi is the constellation of Lord Shiva, bringing with it the moment of choice for all humanity. Similar to the Egyptian Hapi, the Hindu goddess of all celestial and terrestrial waters is in the Hindu tradition, is Ganga, the goddess of purification and forgiveness, worshipped as the mother of humanity. In some ancient sculptural depictions, she is, as we see here, shown holding a vase or jar, similar to the Greek Ganymede. But it was Shiva who captured the celestial waters of Ganga in his hairlocks in order that the rushing waters would not harm Prithvi, a symbol for the entire sevenfold earth chain. Through Shiva's compassionate command on behalf of all creatures, the nourishing and cleansing elixirs are released and distributed into all the kingdoms of nature. In addition to being the third personification of the Hindu Trimurtian logos, Shiva, wrote HPB, the destroyer, quote, is the creator and savior of spiritual man, as he is the good gardener of nature. He weeds out the plants, human and cosmic, and kills the passions of the physical to call to life the perceptions of the spiritual man, unquote. She also points out that Shiva is the patron saint of all yogis and adepts, and one of the many names of Dakshinamurti, the initiator of initiates, portrayed in The Secret Doctrine in a remarkable hymnody to the silent watcher, which Michelle has consented to read out for us to close this portion of the meeting. Monica.
This is from The Secret Doctrine, Book 1, page 207 and 8. This being just referred to, which has to remain nameless, is the tree from which in subsequent ages all the great historically known sages and hierophants, such as the Rishi Kapila, Hermes, Enoch, Orpheus, etc., have branched off. As objective man, he is the mysterious, in parentheses, to the profane, the ever invisible, yet ever present personage about whom legends are rife in the East, especially among the occultists and the students of the sacred science. It is he who changes form yet remains ever the same. And it is he again who holds spiritual sway over the initiated adepts throughout the whole world. He is, as said, the nameless one who has so many names, and yet whose names and whose very nature are unknown. He is the initiator, called the great sacrifice. For sitting at the threshold of light, he looks into it from within the circle of darkness, which he will not cross, nor will he quit his post till the last day of this life cycle. Why does the solitary watcher remain at his self-chosen post? Why does he sit by the fountain of primeval wisdom, of which he drinks no longer, as he has naught to learn which he does not know? I, neither on this earth nor in its heaven, because the lonely, sore-footed pilgrims on their way back to their home are never sure to the last moment of not losing their way in this limitless desert of illusion and matter called earth life. Because he would fain show the way to that region of freedom and light from which he is a voluntary exile himself, to every prisoner who has succeeded in liberating himself from the bonds of flesh and illusion. Because, in short, he has sacrificed himself for the sake of mankind, though but a few elect may profit by the great sacrifice. It is under the direct, silent guidance of this Maha Guru that all the other less divine teachers and instructors of mankind became, from the first awakening of human consciousness, the guides of early humanity. It is through these sons of God that infant humanity got its first notions of all the arts and sciences, as well as of spiritual knowledge. And it is they who have laid the first foundation stone of those ancient civilizations that puzzle so sorely our modern generation of students and scholars.
Thank you, Monica. So,
Thank you, Kurt.
yeah.
Magnificent. Absolutely. I feel like I've been to Sushupti and around the universe all in the same excursion and journey and pilgrimage.
Here.
So Monica says, here, here. I'm sure that there will be lots of discussion. Let's see what time it is. How much time do we even have here? Okay, we have a little bit of time here. So I have a question. You mentioned this idea of the 26,000 year Aquarius and then a possibly 250,000 year Aquarius and the ones inside the other. And that was reminiscent to me of the 455 that we're kind of familiar with, fourth round, fifth root race, fifth sub race, kind of a thing going on, but with preparations for the sixth. So in other words, smaller cycles within big cycles, suffice it to say. And this thing about 5-5 being possibly kind of multipliers. And so you seem to indicate that Aquarius being within this larger Aquarius, that was quite significant. I was wondering if you could talk about that some more.
Yeah. Well, not much, but it was kind of a discovery that I've been looking at and puzzling about for a very long time, but didn't really kind of solidify until recently. But as I mentioned in the talk, that this arrangement of the zodiac that I'm using here was one specified by HBB and ISIS, and that she doesn't talk about all the signs, or at least to my knowledge, I haven't done a research on each of the signs in relation to the zodiac, but I looked at a few of them. And if you look at what she says about Virgo, which is very amazing, right? That whole connection with the three divine dynasties of the third root race. She says that's why you have those three locations of Virgo on the Dendera zodiac. And then she talks about Libra, which is the symbol is the scales, right? It's the turning point, the balance point, and Scorpio being connected with the fourth root race. So it's very much the logic of all of that in relation to the zodiacal wheel as she gives it makes a lot of sense in terms of the cycle in our round and through the races. And so just kind of following that same pattern and overlaying it on the on one of the few drawings she gives us in the second book, page 300. We get, as mentioned, starting at somewhere around the first or second root race of the fifth subrace of the fifth root race, going all the way to at least the first subrace of the sixth. That's more than a million year period. But from where we are, which is the fifth subrace of the fifth root race, we're about halfway through that enormous period. And so we've got, even from where we are, we've got another million years or so to go, just roughly speaking, not pretending to, that there's any kind of accuracy in terms of the large mentions of numbers, accuracy in terms of numbers, but in enormous scale, which we are currently in. We have been in for quite a while, and we're going to be in, associated with the Aquarian sign. And that starts to put into perspective to me, it was like, oh, of course. And, the idea that the foundations being set now through the theosophical movement, primarily on American soil, but throughout the world, linking up with centers all around the globe in preparation for those distant civilizations that will emerge. And of course, one of the things we know that is mentioned here and there in the writings, theosophical writings, is the sixth subrace of the fifth root race, which is still somewhere around. Each subrace is 250,000 years, so we're talking about at least 200,000 years, some maybe more than that. But that's the kind of perspective that divine beings are taking in terms of the evolutionary cycle, right? They're seeing it as a whole. They've been trying to assist humanity out of captivity that really arose, with the Atlantean races and this inversion of the divine capacities of divine wisdom, in fact, that all of us participated in to some extent or another. We were the Atlantean races who did that. And it's still, HPB says, it's still holding us down. It's still holding us back. But we also have this extreme buoyancy in us, this long distance capacity for travel and upliftment and so the theosophical movement was, of course, aiding what's called the long arc. Martin Luther King, the long arc of justice, that despite the chaos that we see around us today, that those foundations have been set, and they're indestructible. That's one of the things that Judge says, it right? He says, even if every copy of the Bhagavad Gita was destroyed today, every zodiac was destroyed across the earth, it would not be destroyed because it's imperishably written in the human heart and in the protective centers across the globe by the great teachers and Mahatmas of our humanity. So yeah, that's to me, that's just it's a very inspiring thing to think of the long distance run. The aims really have to do both with the present, doing what we can in the present, but acknowledging that there are many changes and transformations of humanity and of our earth that are going to take place, perhaps before some of the more golden and universal aspects of the golden age can emerge onto the visible plane. They're there on the hidden planes, but in time they will also emerge on the visible plane.
Is there any analogy, now that we're still looking at this slide, I don't even know what it's called, but the astronomers and the creators of space missions, like the Voyager and others, this slide looks like that, where they go around the gravity of a planet and then they shoot off to further distances. Is there any analogy with that, with perhaps how wise beings might kind of use these cycles or on behalf of humanity? I know it's a stretch, but
no, it reminds me of that idea that that out of the furnace of a man's life and its black smoke, winged flames arise, right? So that even that the enormous gravity and tragedy that occurred with, the Atlantean aspect of our nature, that is also can be used. Even the errors can be used by the wise to as a you could say grist for the mill in a sense, but also nothing is lost, nothing is left unused, and so you can imagine also wise beings who knew all the dark ways that humanity would be passing through, would have anticipated it prior to the Atlantean arrival of the Atlantean civilization and all the darkness there, would have known it was coming and would have made use of it in the best way possible in order to, continue the upward arc. So that's a great point, Jonathan.
well, I've been dominating with the questions. I'm sure there's other questions. David Grossman.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for your the scope of your presentation. Really, shows the whole zodiac. That's for sure. But I was wondering if there's any, or this is speculation, of course, if you can see any indications with the movement into our time of Aquarius, with the really amazing happening, at least in my eyes, that there are so many souls in incarnation now compared to there were at the time of HPB, for example. There's just been this onslaught of incarnations all at once. I mean, you know what I'm getting at? I wonder if there's
Uh-huh.
what the karma and learning curve for us is now with the way things are.
Yeah. It's a great question, David. I don't really know.
Yeah, me either.
But the it seems like one of the lessons is that what is sharing, right? When you imagine the first settlers coming onto the American continent, and of course being very brave and rugged, and having to settle the land and tame the land and build homes and cities and all the rest. But this extreme abundance before them, it was like there was so many resources there, and it was, we sort of like we've had that mentality for a very long time. Is like is the using nature without considering the other, without considering the harm we may be doing, despite the abundance, despite the forgiveness. It's like the endless forgiveness and pouring forth of healing and regeneration that nature offers. That is, learning how to share that abundance properly. And one of the things that I could go off on, this is actually a big topic now that I'm thinking about it. But this that the if you look at the urban footprint of humanity right now, that is the total surface of the earth that has been built out by human civilization, it's a very low percentile. It's something like in the 2 to 3% of the total surface of the earth. But the amount of surface of the earth that's been used for livestock farming and the associated crops to feed and raise livestock covers 38% of the planet's surface. And the enormous quantities of other forms of energy, like water, and the enormous pollution that's created by all of that, and of course the destruction. It's like the destruction of the rainforests, that's occurred. So why is that? Why has why are we feeding ourselves on animals? Why has that become our predominant food source? It's unnecessary, but it has, and but it's a way of eating up the planet with disregard for future generations, for those who live off the land, for other kingdoms of nature, other creatures of nature who would who need undeveloped, unaltered natural environments in order to live and prosper. So I think that perhaps that's crucial lesson, which it seems like we're struggling with. Maybe part of that, what's the lesson of increased population. But of course, I'm sure on the inner planes there's much better reasons and answers why that's the case. We simply don't know.
I see
What did you think, David?
The only thing I thought too was, we're supposed to learn the lesson and the reality of unity.
Mm.
Yeah, so we're given a hard test all thrown together at once,
Mm-hmm.
and we're certainly hypnotized by the diversity on the surface, on the outer planes, and that's what's causing us so much pain and suffering, I think, partly. So we have to learn through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a very good point.
Kirk, can you take a question or a comment from Jim and or Michelle?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kirk. That was really a wonderful plenum of points being made about Aquarius. That's intriguing and interesting to say the least. I wonder, in terms of David's question, I recall once that Rogvan had mentioned that the mystics, when they come into the earth, they are summoners of souls. So looking at what has gone on since, say, at the time of Tsongkhapa up through 1975 and on, HBB, in a sense, was the preparation prior to her of the mysteries being brought to the West, was in a sense working with cycles and also perhaps a kind of call to souls that couldn't incarnate because of the conditions of the world. And then when HBB comes and sounds the teachings, this is a summons, we could say, a logoic appeal, or providing an opportunity for souls who are highly developed to be able to come into the globe. And we know that Judge says that there's a calling of the Yanis who are living in worlds that are dark, and they need a world in which there is greater light and openness to the spiritual. So it could be that in terms of cycles, in terms of initiatives taken by the Brotherhood of Bodhisattvas, that this all led to a number of souls being able to incarnate, as well as those who had a number of problems that had to incarnate. So we can imagine that it had something to do. We don't know how, certainly I don't, but the notion of it, somehow it's a calling, a summoning by the initiative taken by the Great Lodge.
That's a beautiful comment, Jim. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, he says that in the letters that have helped me, something very similar to that. He says that we're not working for the advancement of any given organization, but we're trying to work with the change and upliftment of the manas and the buddhi of the race. And then on the opposite page in the same article or letter, he talks about we're working for a time when the long gone nanis can return.
Wouldn't that be amazing? An amazing truth that the existence of the teaching, especially in the form that is taken now, formulated obviously in a way, again for the first time in the English language, but formulated in such a way specifically to address current humanity and the humanity to emerge over the centuries to come, that is actually what brought more souls to the earth, and that's why we had an increase in population. Wouldn't that be just an amazing fact if we could, somehow verify that's true? But I really appreciate the suggestion there, Jim.
It's so different from other explanations of the rise in population.
Right. And I remember in one of his articles, Raghavan makes this point. He says, people fret about population growth, but if you look at the density, for example, on the British Isles, that they've managed to live in such a way, and you find this in other places as well, on very small plots of land, and that the problem doesn't have to do with the number of persons on the globe, right? As this the statistic, excuse me, the statistic I just pointed to about, the amount of land used to raise livestock. It's not, doesn't have to do with the numbers. It's not, the problem is not with the number of people. It's the way we use nature.
I had a little different question. The judge says that he mentions in one place where there will come a time when pretensions will go for naught, that powers will be needed. I was wondering if you had anything in relation to the Aquarian age that you could mention. I had another part of the question. Is there any duty that we should be focusing on? And I think David was kind of asking that kind of a question. What is at hand in the Aquarian age, that we should focus on in preparation for, let's say, the next age? Because you mentioned different ones, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarian, and then the next stage would be Capricorn. Is there anything that we should be kind of getting right before the next stage comes?
Well, I think you mentioned that in your talk on Capricorn, that that Capricorn, of course, that's actually there is a lot of linkage between the glyph, the double wavy glyph of Aquarius and the sign of Capricorn, right? They both are water glyphs, in the sense that Capricorn is associated with Makara, the sea dragon, and the number 5. In fact, in HPB's explanation of the wavy line, she brings that up specifically. But that's the the 5-pointed star, the which was the symbol of the Pythagorean Academy, the five of fingers of each hand. It's the sign of the human soul, but also of those beings who awakened Manas at the dawn of human awakening. So, and I think what I remember you mentioning was that it's the symbol of divine magic, of self-conscious Kriya Shakti, which would also involve Ikshta Shakti, and Yana Shakti, of course. The 3 have to go together. That's imagination, will, spiritual will, and spiritual wisdom. So, other than that, and all the kind of beautiful associations, I think, that go along with that, I think you're right that of course, each age is a preparation for the ones to come, and so one easy way out to answer that question is the voice of the silence. That's really, and the Bhagavad Gita, both really, and bringing them together, because those are really the foundations of the practical aspects and application of the wisdom, the metaphysical wisdom presented. So, it's a great question.
We're starting to run out of time, but we've got a hand from Jim or Michelle.
Along with that, what we just said, as one understands it, what is going to be very interesting about the Aquarian age is the sense of unity and universality of thought, of mind, but at the same time not losing spiritual self-reliance. In other words, the notion of unity that's growing out of human thought and discovery and science and politics, in philosophy, etc., will be such that it's not translatable into institutional forms of imposed unity. So it's going to be something that's more internal, even though it might have external expressions in various ways. That unity will be expressed in a variety of modalities in small communities or whatever, but it won't be over institutionalized. There'll be those who recognize the importance of the dignity and divinity of conscience, such that you can be spiritually self-reliant while at the same time working with the collective in every conceivable way.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, well, that reminds me of, the prognostication that HPV makes that with the coming races, that the principle of ether will become visible to us.
Yeah.
And that, of course, that is the plane of the mind. So, in other words, the whole capacities for telepathy, uh, seeing at a distance, hearing at a distance, knowing the thoughts of others, no matter where they are in the globe, and that sense of the unity in consciousness, with that the more encompassing and deeper aspects of that realization of the plane of the mind would be seeing that the oceanic unity of it and its root in divine beings and the logos itself. It would seem that would be part of the realization that would come with it. But along with that, I think that's also part of the mythology we're pointing to, that with that descent and awakening of those capacities, it's going to quicken. We're going to have the same challenges that we did with the Atlantean races, where there will be some who will misuse that capacity, and that creates a great danger unless they have been imbued with the philosophical perspective of unity and universal brotherhood. And that is why it's such a keynote of theosophy.
That what you just said helped me understand. Free Rockman had classes called of philosophical anarchism,
Mhm.
and it was amazing because now one can understand the notion that they had of concern and compassion for the masses and freedom from the excessive constraints of imposed political authority or religious authority.
Mm.
But at the same time, while you want to free up and people can individuate, they can individuate in ways in which it involves a connection with other people, to where you find different ways of expressing this sense of unity in a variety of different ways in different cultures, which allows people to have a kind of intellectual freedom and a freedom for self-expression that's really compatible with the growth of the whole.
Yeah,
This is just a beautiful notion, bringing the universal into the particular and the individualization of an individual through connection and through creative encounter with other people and other minds.
yeah.
So the mind is really going to be elevated, like Jonathan was quoting about Judge, to elevate the manas and the buddhi of the race. Is not going to be institutionalized in the ordinary sense at all.
Hmm. No, that's a great point, because that's also, was part of the drag of the Piskian age, is that institutionalization of religion and spirituality
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
that
absolutely.
ends up being a block instead of an aid.
It didn't free love. It absolutely, uh, harmed it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
but also, as you were speaking, Jim, what came to mind was like those kaleidoscopes where it's like a tube you can look through, and it's got all
yeah,
the colored crystals in it. But no matter how you turn it, there's always like a kaleidoscopic, geometric pattern. Everything has its place, and everything is unified in the whole, right? And
yeah,
so it's
beautiful
very
image.
much that idea
Yeah,
that by a broader view, you also know where your place is, and you're delighted about it. And it gives that individual the freedom. They know where the freedom lies for creative capacity within that realm, but woven into the Indra's net, so to speak. So
yeah. Discovering your dharma in asymmetry.
yeah, yeah.
I think that's creative, original. You continually rediscover your Svadharma within the asymmetry of life.
Mm,
You don't look for mechanical balance in society or in terms of oneself.
mm.
That purpose can express itself in multitudinous ways at different stages of life.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you all. Wonderful meeting. I dare say Aquarian. Next week, no less than consciousness and immortality. And our friend Pablo Sender will be speaking with us and for us. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, thank you,
Thank you,
thank you.
Kurt.
Thank you,
Thank you
Kirk.
so much, Kirk.
Thank you.
Wonderful presentation.
Right.
Thanks all for coming. Everybody take care.
Yeah,
Everybody,
thanks to everyone.
namaste. Be well and
Namaste.
safe.
Happy Shashupti.
Happy Sushupti.
Hello.